Hello.
Well, hello there. He went to make something to eat. He'll be right back.
Okay. Man, I was having so many problems with my games crashing, and I ended up. Oh, oh,
Yeah, Star Trek is buggered. Loadouts are broken. Different zones are screwy.
yeah. No, I mean like Star Trek wasn't giving me issues, but uh, Battlefield 2042, Ready or Not, and Diablo occasionally was crashing. And I'm like, what the heck is going on? Well, I just did a complete DDU remove of my graphics driver and reloaded the one from like the month that my graphics card came out, and it runs so much better. Like completely
Sounds like they
solved.
buggered something.
Yeah, like I and actually comparing the performance with that graphics driver compared to all the subsequent ones that I've been upgrading to over the course of this past year, it's been a slow degrade. So I'm gonna leave it on this version for now until I have to change it because it
You
like
would think they would be aware of that.
I'm sure they are. Got to sell those newer generation cards.
Yeah.
I don't know. I whatever. I'm not saying that's the real reason, but it seems unusual. Like even the graphics, like the ray tracing and all that was like
What kind of card is it?
RTX 4080 Super.
I got a 2080 Super.
Nice. I used to have a 2070 beginning of 2020. I actually got the card in February or March of 2020, and then they announced the 3080, and I'm like,
Well, it's actually somebody actually gave it to me. My he does tech for all the Walgreens stores, and he's a gamer himself. And he's like, "Well, I got this. It was sitting out the garage. You want it?" I'm like, "Yeah,
just
better
sitting
than
in the
my 10."
ground. Well, I guess I can't laugh too much about it because I do have a 3080. My 3080 is just sitting here. Kate was using it in a machine I built for her, and she still doesn't want me to like do anything with it, but she hasn't played on it in like 6 or 7 months. So it's like, I could do something with that. Build another gaming machine. I mean, my previous parts from because when I got the 4080 Super in February of 24, like a month or so later, Micro Center had a like the sale on motherboard CPU combos. So I got like a 12900 with 32 gigs of RAM and a Z790 motherboard. It was like just under $500 with tax, and then I threw in another 32 gigs of RAM. So, but I had to drive. We took a trip out to Ohio. It's like the closest micro center to us. So, uh, we took a drive out there, got it, spent the day, ate out, and came home, and I built the machine. But that left me with now I have an 11700 and the the 3080, all the previous stuff, like I could build a whole new gaming rig just sitting there. Because right now, it's in this old Dell Optiplex that I had that was the previous game server that I was using in the house. And I mean, for what she was playing, it's overkill, and I could just put the other box together. But
I got it's an i5, but I think it's like what? Was it 11th gen was the last one? Or 9th gen? I don't remember off the top of my head. But the problem is my board is a mini, so there's like a lot of stuff that doesn't have ports. You have to use adapters.
And I'm back with Skitty. Hello, Jared.
Welcome back. Yeah, last night I got off the game with my brother. I saw you were still on, but like the whole computer crashed, and by the time I got back on, we logged off. So, like I was gonna.
But he's a quitter.
But I figured out what was going on with my crashing. I think seems to be fixed. I had to like completely do a DDU uninstall of my graphics drivers, and I reinstalled the driver that they released the month that I bought my graphics card, and it's running better than ever. And so far, the games that I have had problems with are not giving me problems anymore. So I'm gonna stay on this driver until they force me to be unable to run stuff.
54% upgrade chance, and it still didn't go.
Yeah, I honestly think they have messed with that and made it intentionally harder to get rarity upgrades now.
We're at 68% and it didn't roll.
Oh.
I ran out of upgrades.
Yeah, I'm probably not gonna put a whole lot of money in this game until I know what's going on with it.
What's hilarious is, I don't know if you saw the screenshot that I took, and off topic, Jameer, but somebody, I guess bots are back now. I haven't heard from any in quite a while, spamming to go to MMO Gold, but they've started personally addressing messages now.
I got one too. I just deleted it. I got the same one he did, but it was just addressed to me.
Yep. That's I think the death what is it? The death knell or dying breath of a game is starting to show in Stowe. So it's kind of started at DC Online, because like I was saying, when you go in there, if you go into any like frequented area, there's just bots spamming. Well, I'm pretty sure they're bots spamming, log on to blah 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 and get gold, whatever in-game currency for like cheap, and just spam it. So I end up blocking them. I actually found a couple of like these random characters that they build hiding in corners here in different areas. It's kind of interesting. I just make a random character and go place it in the corner somewhere, hidden out of the way.
I just asked Amy earlier, isn't a lot of Star Trek's architecture based on City of Heroes?
Yeah, City of Heroes was using the first cryptic engine, which then eventually became what they used for Star Trek Online. A lot of the commands and stuff are all the same.
Who was their result? I've always been told that the coding for Star Trek was the issue for a lot of its problems. Is that just a management oversight then, or?
I think they may have tried to do too much with the engine. Because that started, City of Heroes came out in like 2002 or 2003. That engine is old.
We're coming up on the 15th anniversary, so yeah.
They did do a lot of upgrades to it by the time City of Heroes was sunsetted back in 2012, I think it was. But at that point, the engine is 10
The
years
planet
old.
killers have been revealed. Make your way to their location.
They did add like a lot of the
planet killers
features
are now active. We have 10 minutes
they
to
added
destroy as many
before
as possible.
sunsetting were a lot of the lighting and texture features that got added to Stowe, and you can see that when you if you ever get a chance. I have the original City of Heroes server running on a box here in my house that's open to the public, and I'm just keeping it alive as the kind of like an archive of it for posterity. It's in the exact same condition it was when they sunsetted it. So like all of the missions and everything are there. The graphics are all the way, like all the stuff they added to the graphics are in it. I mean, it's identical to how it was when they shut the game servers down.
I mean, theoretically, would it even be possible to put it onto a different engine, or would it just be a lost cause?
Putting Star Trek on a different engine?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, there's tons of options. They could even, I mean, the easiest option would probably be going to UE5, but that would take a lot of hours and manpower to do.
I feel like UE5 might be too graphically intensive, and it's like I know Threadwell would be happy, but I think we'd lose about half the player base if we did that.
Right. I was just using that as an example. It seems to be a very it seems to be an engine that caters heavily to the ease of game creation is why they suggest it. But even still, they could use UE 4.5, UE 4. DC Online runs on UE 3.
I don't know. Somebody explained it to me at this point. It would be like trying to pull the rug out from somebody. But I don't know much about that kind of thing.
I mean, a game like this, I kind of would like to see it on either UE 4, 4.5, or 5, or maybe like shoot, I'm trying to think of the name of it. There's another world engine.
Well, I mean, like if you were Deca or whoever, you're like, okay, this is the situation, is that we only have so much left we can do with this game that makes us a lot of money. Do we try to repair it, make it more, or do we just kill it and try to make something else? Like if that was your business sense, what would you go with?
Well, the one thing they can't do is alienate the player base or discard the efforts that the players have put into the game.
Exactly. Yeah, that's my thinking too.
If they retain that, they have a good chance of succeeding. Now, developing or changing the game to something more modern of an engine, they could do that by building what we usually do where I work or have worked. Previous jobs did this too. It's kind of a standard. You have your production environment, you have your test environment, and then you have a sandbox environment for developing. In the sandbox, you spin up most of where I work. We have virtual servers, so like spinning them up is just taking a a VM image of a server and throwing it on another not dedicated box, but like another virtual box, and then you spin that up, and then you have that environment that's an identical copy to what you're running now. Then you can play around in it, do development, and then shoot it over to the test environment, and then have people actually test it and troubleshoot it. And then if it passes that test, usually it's ready to go on to production, and then you just load it up as a patch into production. With something like this, you could just have a whole team just copy assets over, and then have them start to work in the new engine and either import those assets or use those assets as a baseline to develop new assets that will work in the new engine. And then once they've got it to where that's running without issue, then pass it on to the test environment, have people test it out and try to break it. And then if that passes, then you could say, okay, January 1st, 2026, we have Star Trek 2.0 or whatever they want to call it, and you just log in, and they could use the same database data, so like your characters could live, all of your assets, all of your resources and everything would be there, because the database, as long as it's, well, even if it's on an older database engine, you can still migrate that data into a new database and then just reconnect the connections in the new game engine.
On today's market and environment, do you see that feasible for that something that they would do in the next couple of years? Or you think it would just be not financially worth it to them to do that?
That would all depend on, okay, I know at one point Star Trek Online had the player base of basically the population of San Francisco. As long as those numbers are similar to that or have grown, then that's something that would be feasible, because they have a ginormous player base that's putting money into this game. Well, I should caveat that. If a significant majority of that player base is spending money in the game, then yes, it would be feasible to make that endeavor. But it all depends on what their development team looks like currently. If they have a handful of good developers, that might be enough to get the job done. If they need to hire more, they have that base group of developers that they can augment. Now, if they don't have a development team that could handle it, then that means they're going to have to acquire a development team that would be sufficient enough to do the task. That would add more of a drain to their resources if they have to go that route, which may weigh on whether or not to do it. It's all
considering how many people they just laid off, so I wouldn't think that they're going to bring more people in.
Right. Well, there's.
But on the other hand, they don't know how to put a loading screen in, so...
Right.
Or how to turn the gift items on.
I think.
Destroy all the primates.
In my
will
opinion,
belong to us.
The issues they've run into now seem to be purposefully inflicted, because when you the game has connections built to databases, and I'm assuming they use like a SQL server, which is typical for stuff like this. Anyway, so you have your databases on the SQL server. You have an IP address to that SQL server. You have login credentials for that SQL server. And then the game engine has those built in. So if they had to migrate the database to a SQL server in their in-house on-prem, then they just need to know, okay, here's my IP address for the SQL server. This is what it's called, the database, and then put it into the game engine and point it to that connection, and then the game should be able to reconnect to the databases and tables that it needs to retrieve the players' inventory, the players' profiles, the loadouts, and all that would be stored in those database tables. To me, it seems like somebody renamed a table, deleted a table, or in SQL land, that they dropped a table and the data's gone. Or they went into the game engine and removed connection string data that the game needs to know, okay, where, like,
Somebody made a oopsie poopsie, basically.
or did it on purpose as they were heading out the door out of spite.
Oh, sabotage.
Right.
Oh, because if you think about it, if somebody goes in and changes a line of code somewhere, it can basically just fuck everything up, and then they have to go through that code and try to find where the problem is.
Right. Especially if it's done out of malice, then they're gonna have to dig. Nobody's gonna help them, and you tend to, when you're like all of my previous jobs, you're commenting code saying, okay, this section is for XYZ, and this is what it does. But some programmers are lazy and don't comment all of their sections out, and some just purposefully don't do it because I don't want people knowing what, all of my code does. So hopefully they did put comments in there, but like I said, if somebody did this out of malice, they may have went through and removed all the comments, so that now you have to actually debug and go through every method and function to determine, what does this do? Where does it go? What connects to it? What relies on it? And you'd have to do that.
Jurassic Park, huh? Go through each line of code one by one?
Well, not necessarily each line of code, because modern development tools usually have like breakpoints and stuff where you can run a section, and when it runs into an issue, you see, okay, this line of code, then you get to that line, and then you can follow it to the method that's connected to it or running, then you go to that method. It makes it a lot easier, modern tools, but if you have millions of lines of code, that's still a daunting task.
Someone's in the office sitting there running that, going, you didn't say the magic word.
But still, like I was saying, if they acquired this and it needed to be migrated to their on-premises servers or even in the cloud, you would just copy the databases over, you point the game engine to the IP address of the new SQL server, update the login credentials that it needs in order to log into the SQL server to connect to it, and then it should just hit the ground running. Nothing's really changed with the data. Like, if they did a one-to-one copy of the previous database that kept all of our character information and our loadouts and all that information, then it's just copy, paste, and, well, in SQL land, it's export, import, and you would import the database into the new database. And
Control C, Control P.
The Voth are
all of the
retreating.
tables would be there. So
So you say it's plausible that could happen in the next couple of years, but
it all depends on how much money they're making and whether or not they believe, like, if they start seeing a huge drop in the player base, that might motivate them to update it, depending on like their viewpoint on why the players are leaving. If they feel the players are leaving because the game has become too outdated, then they may do that depending on how much of the player base is spending money in the game and how big the player base is compared to how big it was when they acquired, or whatever criteria they
but does it make sense for them to keep it running as it is, as stretched as the engine and different stuff is of it? I mean, I know you say if it's not broke, don't fix it, but it was old when it came out too.
Right. I mean, they've done a spectacular job on upgrading the graphics in this game. It still looks pretty good. But
Like, I've had to make that point to Thranduil because it's like, dude, look at the assets coming in. Like, look at Gowron compared to how Klingons looked like years ago.
Well, no, it's not even so much graphic-wise. It's just I feel like it could be so much smoother.
Well, no doubt, but it's like it got pretty bad. I think they were talking to like the Cryptic CEO, and it's like he apparently gets asked almost every week, like, when are you upgrading to a new engine? And it's like obviously that was just not in the cards, with Cryptic in charge.
right, there's also a operating system and driver issue that they will have too, as Windows gets updated, graphics cards get updated, DirectX updates, certain things
that's
may
what
not.
That's what I was going for. Yeah.
Right, certain things may not be compatible eventually. I mean, there's only so many things you can add to the game engine to keep it compatible, to where at some point it may just fall outside of the realm of small additions. You're going to have to go to a new engine that has a completely different foundation. That's why I was saying, like, they may have to go to like a Unreal Engine just for ease of development, because like another game engine may not be as not necessarily compatible, but like might not be as easy to port this over to, whereas like Unreal Engine has become so almost WYSIWYG in its design. I don't know. That to me, if they're trying to cut corners and save time, Unreal Engine's probably the best route, because of just the development time that would be saved and getting up to speed with it seems to be something that it was developed to handle. To like the learning curve, they have reduced significantly in it. So I don't know.
It's just a curiosity. Where we go from here? We got a new company in charge at the 15-year marker.
Right.
It's like,
It's definitely not going the route of like creating a new engine from scratch. That would not be ideal.
No, that would not be odd. Are we gonna run a few things? I only have maybe about 30 or 45 minutes.
Yeah, I'm down to run some stuff.
Alright, I'm just gonna grab something to drink and stuff. I'll be right back.
Okay.
I know, last year or two, I've kind of been pretty optimistic about the game, but like this last week, it's like, oh god.
Yeah, it's got me concerned. I mean, I've spent quite a bit of money in this game, trying to, get what I want out of it, but also, I know the money that I spend into it is, going towards helping show them that the game is desired and that they should keep going with it. But this doesn't look good. Because that's kind of like, for it to not know where your loadouts are saved to, for it to not know certain items aren't upgradable or re-engineerable, if that's not really a word, but anyway, you know what I mean. To me, those hiccups flag in my head as a issue with being able to connect to the database to determine the status of items, or read the loadout data would be stored in a database. Because like just knowing that from setting up the City of Heroes server, it uses a SQL database. It has tables in there that are linked by player ID, which is created when you create your character, and then that player ID links across multiple tables. So you have your player information table, which stores a record, a row that has your player ID, your name, your character type, your location, XY coordinates, XYZ coordinates, and timestamp information. And then another table will store your inventory items, and those are linked to that other table via your player ID. And then there'll be another table that has like your accolades and accomplishments, and that's linked by your player ID. And then in this instance, you'd have your loadouts table, and there would be a row that would have like loadout 1, loadout 2, loadout 3, and then those are linked. That row would be linked to your player ID, and then the individual loadouts by name probably have an ID, and then there would be a separate table with multiple rows that would be like player ID, XYZ, loadout ID, ABC. In that loadout, it would have, in that row for that loadout, it would have multiple columns that would do like, okay, what type of engine, what type of shield, etc., etc. And then the game engine itself would go, okay, I have this player ID. I need all the data for that player ID out of all the tables. So it just links them. And it would just go, okay, I go to this table, this player ID. Oh, there's that loadout. So if you break that chain and say the loadout table is blank, then yeah, it doesn't know where your loadouts are. Or if the item table is blank, it doesn't know, okay, is this item able to be re-engineered? Is it able to be upgraded? All that data's gone. So it doesn't know. So the game engine treats it as whatever the base default item status would be, just so the game doesn't crash, because I'm sure they coded into the game engine itself, engines have these characteristics, but in order for them to be upgraded or re-engineered, it needs to look at the table and go, okay, this is the Gemidar engine. Can it be upgraded? And it goes over and looks at the table based on the item ID, and if the data's not there, then it doesn't know. So it'll just treat it as whatever the base stats are for that. Not necessarily in-game stats, but I mean like the stats for that item object, as far as the game engine is concerned.
I know hilariously we've seen fantastic examples of a good working database. Because I know like a lot of the old stuff is not upgradable, but if you throw it in the upgrade window, it turns into the new item.
Right.
That automatically tells me that somebody knows how the database works. If I can just throw this in an upgrade window and it swaps it out.
Yeah, this is just a lot of speculation, but based on my knowledge of how this stuff works. The most likely situation that's happened. My guess, anyway.
Well, I can't say I blame a cryptic dev for being spiteful. It's like, because what they basically bought cryptic just to lay him off. You know, that's just shitty, you know.
Right. Well, like I said, I hope